Alrighty, so welcome to the Way We Do It TV. This is my first show, and I'm coming to you from Altadena, California. I will be going live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Coast time, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And I want to give you a perspective that you might not have seen before. I'm gonna stay pretty much in the world of comedy because that's where I mastered my skills. I'm a former BET executive producer and executive, and I was fortunate to be at BET during from 1990 to 2002. So I was there when it was black owned, and I was there when it was white owned. And also I was on the East Coast. I started on the East Coast, and I ended my BET career on the West Coast. And I actually started in the corporate offices in Washington D.C. Those of you who are familiar with D.C., the Georgetown area, that's where the corporate headquarters was. And while I was on the East Coast, I started as a accounts payable manager. I was hired as an internal auditor, but some things went down. And so I was asked to be an accounts payable manager. And I'll tell you more about that later on as we continue to discuss every week topics. But I'm here because I want you to tune in, like and subscribe. But I want you to tune in because I want you to ask me questions that you can get answered from someone who's actually at BET and not just uh, on programming, but on the corporate side. So as a budget director, I can have conversation on certain things I'm not going to share, but about the running of a black media company. And black television at the time was unique. It's not a record label. It's not a radio station. It has its own unique needs, and there's just very few of us out here on the planet that have that experience. And I was one of those. So I'll be able to share with you the things that the someone who was there. I was there when the company was privately owned by Bob Johnson. I was there when it went public, and actually, when it did go public, who actually wrote the checks for it to be public? Who actually bought the shares? And you might be surprised about that. But I want to drive it around things that you might be interested in over the years, because there's been a lot of information that's been thrown out there from perspectives from people who weren't at BET. It's just only their opinions, and I'll share those as well as we go down this journey. But this live is the way we do it, TV, and that's because I was fortunate enough to be able to be one of the few creators of their own sketch comedy show. Mine aired on BET from 2000 to 2002. Um, at the beginning of being bought by Viacom, uh, sort of like that little window, right when it was kind of announced. That's when I got my show, and that's why just had a 2-year run. And I'm one of the few that have a sketch comedy show that actually owns their trademark. Took me 10 years to get it, but I own the trademark on my show. So that's very important because I can then do things with it that I want to do. I don't have to wait for someone to tell me or beg them, can we bring it back? Can we bring it back? So I actually own the trademark, and we'll go into a little bit more about that. But the topic for today's show is, is there, because we hear a lot about, and I'm staying in the comedy world because that's kind of where I work as a producer. I'm not on air talent. I love comedians. They are very gifted people. I had a run of very talented comedians, and as you start to, what I would suggest you do, check out my channel because I put up the episodes that I use, and you'll see some incredibly talented people that are still out there on the grind. And if any of you want to be a stand-up comedian, that's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to go out there And it's hard work, man. You got to get up on the stage, get in front of a mic, write a joke, tell a joke. It's just you can't get around that. And so a lot of you who are successful in getting a taste of it from being funny on YouTube, and you want to now move on to the craft, because there's only really two ways you can go, right? You can go as a actor, a comedic actor, or you could be a stand-up comedian. Stand-up, there's two different things. Stand-up comedians can be actors. Um, Comedic talent can be stand-ups, but you have to play out those skills. And to me, the rough one is the stand-up, because it's very independent. You're on your own, and the craft is you got to make people laugh, man. People can be brutal out there in the world. So I'm looking forward to having those kind of discussions with you guys, talking about what's happening. But these first couple of episodes, again, I'll be on Wednesdays, 7 o'clock West Coast time, 10 o'clock East Coast time, and I'm gonna pretty much go for an hour. I am a producer, and so time is important, and episodic television is just that. So there's a cute little clock up here, and so I can see my time. So, and an hour is enough for us to start the dialogue. We'll go further if we need to, and just have discussions. In my perspective, that I'll give you is going to be coming from someone who is behind the scenes, but actually, it's kind of unique in the sense that I know everything about how to run a show, because I've been on both sides of that fence. So I didn't just get a talent budget. And we'll discuss those things. Also, I put on the topic as well, and it's funny. I had this conversation a couple of days ago, because I was watching a special on Vice TV, and they talked about Black comedy in America, and they addressed Def Jam, but they didn't address Comic View. And I'm thinking, like, well, how does that happen? Some of you might be a little young, but when there was only really two platforms for stand-up comedians on television, right? And one was Comic View, and the other one was Def Jam, and they had different directives for them. And we see now there is no real platform for Black comedians, as well as urban comedians, with that kind of a Black approach to things. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that, because that's a cultural thing, right? So let me just kind of go back and talk about what those two branches are. Comic View, which was on basic cable at the time. Back in the day, there was basic cable, where your parents would buy that cable package, and BT was on that basic tier. And then you had premium channels, and one of the premium channels was HBO, and HBO had Def Jam. Now, what's the difference between those two? Well, HBO was subscriber based, meaning they didn't take advertisers. And when you don't take advertisers, your subject matter can be a lot edgier. You pay in for no advertisement, so advertisers are not freaking out that their product is around something that might be controversial to their product. So anybody who has a product, you're very conservative in where you put that product, because if you got a family product and then it's around stuff that's non-family, it could hurt your brand. So premium channels kind of developed, and so you have a lot more creative leeway. On basic cable, you took advertisers, so you did your content, but advertisers had the choice or not to advertise around your show, and that's where you were getting the majority of your money for your show and for your network. So that's why there's some rules, and then there's basic cable has some FCC rules. They're a little more stringent. Basic cable broadcast a little bit more stringent about language than a premium channel, where your subscriber base, and it's the choice of the subscriber to purchase the product. So it's a little bit, you not get away with things, but you don't have those kind of restrictions. So in the case of Black comedy, basically what that meant was on Comic View, you've never heard the N word, right? It's basic cable, never going to hear it. And there's some other basic words that we're not allowed to use as well, right? On basic cable. Def Jam had the ability to use the N word, right? So it gave it an edgier approach and just a different style. To be kind of honest, like my aunts who are from Virginia and South Carolina and in Texas, they couldn't really watch Def Jam because of all the cussing, right? So that was, so they skewed to Comic View because it didn't do that, and that was one of the approaches, which gave a full platform of comedy, right? So you had one place where there was, cussing was limited and it was certain languages just not have. And then you had another outlet which tended to skew to a younger audience that, they kind of went for it. So for me, that's a balance, right? So it's giving you two different things. It's just like when you go eat, you go get a salad, there's all kind of, stuff you can put on tons of different types of salad dressing, right? So, me, I don't like blue cheese. So my sister, she does. Boom, there you go. Options and choices. So the same thing happened there. And then the other thing between the two shows and just how it was focused was Comic View is a little more on the up and coming side. And how do I know that? Because I was a showrunner on Comic View. So I know I went through the audition process of how to get our comics on. And it was that area. We didn't have the kind of funds that a Time Warner HBO had. So we had to take an approach where it was a showcase. And so we were looking for the most talented people that didn't blow up, but they were good in their areas. And if I saw their tape at the time that I started show running the show, if I saw their tape and they were funny, I didn't go through a management or agents, all of those tiers, all those doors that could shut people down. I didn't go with, okay, well, I have, I'm a big agent and I got 20 comics, so my 20 comics are going to be on the show. We didn't do none of that kind of stuff, right? It was like, if they're new, they're funny, they want to be down, we put them on. And as you can see, there was a lot more newbies that you saw on Comic View. And again, that was the approach, to give as many people the opportunity that they could to get down. And at some point, our basic cable, we were in 90 million homes, so the platform was there. The second thing about Comic View, as far as structure that people really don't know, it was because we had limited funds. It was for comics that were on the road to get more money on the road at the comedy clubs. And so what does that mean? So if I'm a comedy owner and I'm in Baltimore and I say, hey, Andre, I just saw Andre on Comic View, more people will come to my club because they would have saw me on Comic View, and then now I'm in Baltimore, so more people would come. As an owner of that club, I would be contacting Andre to come through my club because exposure, right? Now, the thing about the exposure was BET was not involved in any of the money that you get from the comedy club. We also did something different, is that we did auditions at comedy clubs. And the requirement of those auditions at the comedy clubs was you couldn't charge the comic to be in the audition. And all we asked was a clean tape, audio and video of the audition. So if I'm in Baltimore, I got my comedy club. They could use our name for free. We didn't ask for anything, no ticket sales. We didn't ask for nothing from the bar or nothing for no food. All of that money was the owner's money. All we asked is you couldn't charge. So if 20 comedians were going to be part of their Comic View auditions, and we had a promoter who would make sure that it was contracted, that all we required was, and back in those days, see how old I am, it's a VHS tape of the whole comedy audition. And we did that around the country, right? So how many we could do, we did that because that you could find local talent, right? You know, back in the old days, everybody had to get on a bus and come to Hollywood to be discovered. And we were like, no, this is the power of television is it could be someone like Benji in Florida, you know, or Darius in St. Louis, you know, I mean, Hamburger. There's just so many funny comedians, and they're funny in their regions, and we wanted to kind of get to them, and that was our way of doing that. And so they sent a tape, and my boss at the time said I had this as a showrunner when I was showrunning Comic View before I got my own show. I had to watch every audition myself. I couldn't delegate that to staff because you know everybody has their own little biases, right? So, and you know, comedy is everybody thinks certain things are fun, but I'm an executive producer, so I needed to see everything before we then narrowed it down to the ones that we invited to come out to LA to perform on the show. And so that's how that worked, right? So it was always triggered to give you more value for the comics that were on the road, right? It was for road comics because that way your set would hit. You go to your next club, you know, you're in Dayton and they're like, oh man, we saw your set. That club promoter will invite you. You have better leverage. And that was the whole idea, right? It was to showcase. We also had, you remember, of the Kings of Comedy, I mean, 2 of them came from Comic View, D.L. Hughley and Cedric Entertainer. And so we thought we did pretty good with that. And to me, it was a balancing act. But I was disappointed when I didn't see when Vice did that story on Black comedy. They acted as if Comic View wasn't as important as it was. And so that's why I'm addressing it to you guys now. And I will continue to address things that I think are extreme biases that I see out in the marketplace. Because I think up until this point, no one has really talked about it. And no one can talk about it from a perspective of being there behind the scenes and actually can tell you. And so someone would have to question my credentials, which that would be tough because then they have to say that I didn't exist and I didn't do it, right? So when Comic View first started in Gardena at the Normandy Casino, that I wasn't there, right? Or later on, I'll talk to you about why we had to move out of California to go to other states to continue the show, right? So that why eventually we went to Atlanta, and you saw us in New Orleans as well. So why we had to do that, and we were in Florida as well too, which I thought, you know, you never know why things happen, but I enjoyed that because bringing the show to the people was important. And some of you might have parents, you might have gone, or grandparents might have gone. The energy and the excitement was so cool. And for young people to kind of see, because you know when we brought those trucks in and you saw the staff and you saw people who looked like you, not only in front of the camera but behind the camera and doing those actions, you know, that was planting a seed for young people that, you know, it's like, well, what does that person do? Why is that Black person coming out of that truck? Great example for me. My first experience with Black directors was actually a female director. It was at BET. So when I first came to BET and I came out to a show, Lynn Harris Taylor came out of the truck as a television director. So I had no perspective other than a Black woman coming out of the truck running the show, right? And the production manager was a Black woman as well, who was bringing the crews and everything together. So I had no idea that this is supposed to be a male-dominated issue because when I was brought in, they were rocking it. So that's how I looked at it, and that's as powerful as it needs to be. So I know they have all the discussion about DI and all that stuff, but remember, just keep quality people. The whole idea is you got to make sure you got quality people to come to do your stuff, and quality people come from all races, and all races need to be included. And the way you do that is you do your own shows, you do your own stuff. Uh, Black entertainment television put more Black people in entertainment from behind the scenes into the system than any other entity. Black people, the sheer volume of Black people who are now doing television below the line, above the line, the sheer numbers more than any other network could ever do. And that was a powerful thing. And years later, that skill you take with you. They can't take that skill away from you when you do it. So I just wanted to kind of, I saw that, and I just want to make sure that you guys, and that's why I want you guys to come in and kick back and start to, as this kind of comes out, start to ask questions and ask me, because my whole thing is I'll be looking at the Q&A and comments, and I'm one of those who actually will read them and pull questions from that to address, because I think it should be interactive. I remember when I would watch a show and I would type something, and then, you see the talent and they're just talking as if they just not even paying attention to it. It's almost like the chat room was talking to itself, and then the talent is talking to them, to you, and ignoring it. So I wanted to do something a little different. So I will be doing that. I think that's important, because it kind of gives me a sense of what kind of things that you want to know that from someone who actually was there, right? And those things that I could share with you, and how to move that forward, and what do we do now to get those kinds of things back. We are limited as in Black television now with some of these things, because other people are making decisions for us. And we just need to make sure that kind of gets balanced out as much as possible. And all things can be there. I'm not one of those that you can't have a variety of things. And that's the whole idea. It should be variety, right? Everything we do, there should be more examples. You go to the grocery store, man, shelves have a variety. There's a variety of peanut butters. There's a variety of jellies. There's just a variety of bread. There's just a variety. The more, the merrier. With us, unfortunately, because one of us gets through, then there's a lot of pressure on one producer or one creator to do something because you want something else. Well, the solution to that is you got to open up the door a little bit wider. You got to have a breadth of those things. And I say that to say that when I realized once Viacom was acquiring BET, and I was at this time in Burbank on the creative side, that I didn't, just like any kind of acquisition, you're not going to be there much longer, right? Because they want to bring their own people in. So, that's just the nature of that beast. That's just how that works, right? So my boss at the time said, when that happened, and before I got my sketch comedy show, what do you want to do? And I said, he said, no, don't tell me now. Just, go away and just come back and think about it. He said, we got about 2 years before they're going to get to us in Burbank. We were stationed in Burbank, California. And so, it's like, well, what do you want to do? So I thought about it, and I came back. I was so glad that I got my feet wet with doing Comic View, because I had a greater appreciation of how you produce television and how you produce specifically stand-up comics, who are a unique talent to themselves. And you have to have a huge respect for their craft. And I did. And so I wanted to take what I learned to something I was a little bit more excited about, in a sense that, I kind of like more scripted things, right? Sitcoms. I enjoy sitcoms, and, I'm a graduate of Howard. So I was at Howard, watching Sanford and Son and What's Happening and Good Times, so I'm just doing my thing. So I'm enjoying that scenario. A lot of them are actors in that world. And I developed a skill around stand-up comedians. And so when I looked back at things that I wanted to do, I wanted to do sketch comedy, because I thought that's the natural progression from our network. So we have a pool of these stand-up comedians, talented people, and they want to then eventually pursue. A lot of them wanted to pursue Hollywood type of careers, right? So see Martin Lawrence doing, Bad Boys, that kind of a thing. So a lot of, Eddie Murphy, a lot of stand-up comedians made successful transitions into film and then into television. And so I wanted to be a part of that perspective. So for me, what I thought was, okay, stand up, sitcoms, films. What is the next progression? And for me, it was sketch comedy. And so when I thought back about sketch comedy, I mean, In Living Color just was it for me. Before that, it was Saturday Night Live, but actually I enjoyed another crazy little sketch comedy called Hee Haw, which was very white, but it was different, and I don't know. I think it's on YouTube, and maybe you guys can pick up and find some of the episodes on YouTube. It's just part of they're in a cornfield, but it's just type of humor. Monty Python. I was kind of like into the kind of quirky humor, but In Living Color brought like the coolness. It brought the urban feel. That's what was missing for me. And Keenan and his philosophy and what they did just implanted in my mind. Before that, I was gravitating a little bit because I'm older now to Saturday Night Live, but I only zoomed in on Saturday Night Live when Eddie Murphy was there. And when Eddie Murphy was there, I was there. And when Eddie Murphy left, I left. It didn't do it for me. I didn't know why, but I just knew when he left, I'm like, I'm out. Right. So, and then when Living Color came, I said, I know what it is. And it's that comedian, that stand-up comedian. I didn't know at the time because I was a kid. I just knew, when Eddie did his characters, man, he just had me dying. And then when In Living Color comes back, they had me dying. But what In Living Color also did for me too was it showed to me urban comedy, but using non-Black people as well in your troupe to tell the stories. So I was like, okay, from the mind of a Black man, but it has this urban feel, but he's including everybody. He's including non-Black people in telling these stories. I'm like, that stuck in my head. And so I said, how can I do that from where I am? And I wanted to get that back. And then I heard about, the issues that Keenan or struggles or challenges he had with Fox and that kind of thing. And here's the thing about being at a Black company. I didn't have to translate my ideas to non-Black people. Right? I had one person who was Black man from Detroit. I had one person to pitch my stuff to. And that was it. Right. So I didn't have to explain what this was, what's the difference between bid whiz and poker, none of that cultural stuff. So I mean, that advantage. And I didn't have to do any kind of translations. Why did you do that? Da, da, da. I mean, I had the same requirements because I was on basic cable that I had when I was doing Comic View, right? I couldn't, no N-word and no cussing, right? That was just standard we had to take. So, but after doing Comic View, you could do a lot without having to do that. And I literally went after Black stand-up comedians who part of their regime, they didn't have to cuss. So I was able to get a group that could fulfill the target audience that I needed, right? So, because the one thing I do respect about stand-up comedians is if that's not their style, then you're hindering them, and that's not good, right? You got to let them. If they are who they are, right? If they're a cusser, then they're a cusser, and it's hard to make that transition. So you find the styles, in a HBO kind of format, subscriber base. You do a sketch comedy there, you could get away with a lot more stuff, right? So that's the approach that I took, was to find comedians that have already have some kind of experience on BET and some following, and those who are in the Burbank area that I could recruit to do the show. We were right across from the Burbank Airport. There's a studio called Center Staging. By the way, we were able to get a great studio up there. A lot of the Burbank entertainment companies stayed away from the studio because they thought the airplanes flying over would cause problems with that studio with sound, and it never did. So, we were able to get a great deal on it. I wish we'd had extended it longer, because once we were in there doing our thing, and then the bigger entertainment companies of Burbank, once they realized, oh, that's good work, when it was time to renew the contract, and Center Stage was like, we can get more money for us. So it is what it is. So again, another example of playing out something that would make something work, and then other people come and grab it up. But it was good. So we had to shoot our show in Burbank, and so I went back to my boss. I said, "That's what I want to do. I want to do a sketch comedy show." And he's like, "All right, cool." So he says, "Write it up." So I wrote it up. How we were able to do it. I have a corporate budget background from when I was in DC. So I knew about how to write out a full budget, everything. I mean, the complete budget for down to the penny of how much it costs to do your show, how many episodes, the whole thing. So I was fortunate enough to understand what that process was, and I understood what kind of budget that I could get at the time, BT, and I knew we didn't really do sketch. Sketch was not a part of our world, because it was a little more expensive to do, because you had that kind of writing and props and components like that. So I thought about that as well too, but I still wanted to do sketches. So to me, there's an advantage of having a stand-up comedian, and one of those things is, man, I picked stand-up comedians who were storytellers and who already would create characters, like on the stage. You go in a comedy club and someone's talking about a character. They're like, da 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 da. I'm like, all I had to do then to that comedian is like it's like Roman Murray, Dan the Garbage Man. Okay, Dan the Garbage Man was his character. All we did was bring that character to the stage. It's his character, and then added some props to his character and let him do his thing as a stand-up comedian, right? So I was like, as long as you did the certain words that you couldn't use, I wasn't into like, oh, you got to do it again, do this. Comedians know how to make things funny. They know how to change on the fly. I did bring in a small live studio audience, because stand-up comedians like to feed off of humans, right? So I had that audience there, and let them do their thing. That's what I enjoy about them. He's like, okay, Roman, you have from here to here to do your thing. You got a guest. If you have a guest, you got a guest. Here's who the guest is, and here's a few props that we have, and do your thing. That's what I love about stand-up comedians. You don't have to micromanage them. Just let them do them. There was a movie, Boomerang. Remember Boomerang, when Eddie Murphy's character said to Grace Jones's character, who was a Strange, and he was saying, Robin Givens, just let Strange be Strange. Exactly. Black comics specifically, let them do their thing, right? It's like, get the ones that you can work with, but as a producer, don't try to use your comic actor skill set on a stand-up comic. Right? They are built to do their thing. Remember, they're on the road. They get vibes. They know how to make things happen. And that's why, to me personally, why a lot of them just don't make it at Saturday Night Live, because it's too restricting of the kind of skill set of a stand-up comedian, like what they do. And so that's why I wanted to have a platform that they could do them. I never approved a sketch because of my own personal opinion of the sketch. Sketches were approved, and this is the great thing about creating your own show. And I appreciate my bosses because none of them told me that, none of them told me I couldn't approve anything. So I approved everything on my show. I created the show. I hired the cast. I did everything. And it's a good reason. I mean, the price is much cheaper if I do everything as well too. So they got a great thing out of it. I didn't realize at the time how powerful that was. And my philosophy was, just what are you doing? What is it? And if I feel like they could pull it off, and that was their thing, Doug Williams did this thing called Gus the Cabbie. Hilarious. I didn't have to tell Doug what to do. I'm like, okay, sometimes Doug has some celebrity guests, and sometimes we had some hardcore hip hoppers that came through. The East Siders came through. I said, all right, Doug, it's the East Side, so things like that. That was it. But I never had to go in and tell them what to do. Speedy and Belinda Foster did this thing called Singing Cousins. Belinda, a stand-up comedian who actually plays the acoustic guitar, and that damn crazy Speedy was playing a harmonica, doing what Speedy does. Hey man, 3 minutes, Singing Cousins, as long as it's not the same routine you did last week when we shoot it. It was exciting, right? So my first had two seasons, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do 2 different types of formats. So my first season, I was lucky enough to have it built, and I don't know if you saw it, but I had it built around Rickey Smiley. And the thing about Rickey Smiley, before even sketch comedy, he's a great example of a comedian who creates stories around people that you can kind of close your eyes and you can see him. Miss Bernice Jenkins, all that stuff. That is the perfect type of comedian to build things around, because they take this talent that they've created out on the road. It's theirs. And with our limited props, but I kind of created, when you look at the shows, the sketch shows, it looks more like comedy theater, right? Because in theater, you don't have a lot of props, but you have enough props for people to understand where you were. Because that's all I could afford. I couldn't afford full-blown out sketch shows because I just didn't have the money. So I had basically 3 blank stages with just some little bit of difference. First year, as you see, I had some steps, and I had a backdrop with a curtain and a little stage. And everything had to play off of that. So in my mind, it was like going to a 99-seat theater, doing a sketch show in a theater, and minimal props. So Gus the Cabbie, he's holding the steering wheel, regular chairs, from home, you know what I mean? And a painted board that looks like a side of a taxi. So you could establish where you were, and you jumped in, and we worked it, right? Because it looked like, and that was my whole idea for the first season, was for it to look like a stage play sketch comedy show, because that's what I had available to me. And again, that's what kept my budget where it needed to be, because sketch shows can be really expensive. And the other thing too is there wasn't a whole lot of takes on the show. I don't know if you guys are familiar with takes, but shooting the show. Well, when you shoot the show and you're like, oh, cut, let's do it again. Well, we didn't have a lot of time for a lot of that stuff, right? So the other advantage of having stand-up comedians, man, they're on point. And me personally, a lot of the first things that comes out of their mouth is the funniest stuff. It's like when you tell them to do it over and over again, they lose it because they're giving you that 150 right off the top the first time. So my job as a producer is capture it the first time, because normally the first way they do it, man, is hilarious. You have them do it again. It's sometimes you'll hear behind the scenes shows that the first time, hey man, and I don't do a lot of rehearsing with stand-up comedians. Rehearsing before the show, because sometimes in the rehearsal they'll do the funniest one, and then when it comes to doing it live, Remember, because they already shot it. They already put it out there. And so it's hard to do it again. So it's sort of like in sports. I played football when I was in high school. It's like walk arounds, you just kind of walk through the motions, on Friday before the game. We played on Saturday morning. So, Friday we had our helmets and shirts on. We just walked through the little plays, boom. Just walk through, make sure you do it. So that skill set that I learned playing high school football, again, knowing that when the comics turn it on, they turn it on. So I don't want them to turn it on in rehearsal. I want them to turn it on because one thing, when they see those lights and they see those cameras, you don't have to worry about them. That mic is on. They see the little audience. They're amped up. They're ready to rock and roll. And so I learned that about them. So same thing there. So we didn't have to do a whole lot of reshooting. Matter of fact, I don't remember us, unless it was just some technical difficulty that was for the production crews on our side that we did. Other than that, we pretty much rock and rolled that first one. So first year, it was Rickey Smiley and a lot of the talent that he wanted to do. And we worked around that. We're playing around with different things. We had videos, home videos back in those days. We were trying to do a little more variety kinds of things, just to make it a little different that first season. Second season, Rickey decided not to come back. And so he decided to go back home area. Because remember, we were in Burbank. And so I then went into an all-star cast kind of a format, more similar to in Living Single. So I had a cast. So some of the talent I had from the first season, then I added to that talent for second season, and then the whole cast was the host. And then they drove the show. And then I had celebrity hosts to do it. So when you go on the channel, check it out. Check out the 8 episodes, the second season episodes, because that's when I was starting to dabble with when Rickey left. I was able to shoot a couple more shows before that second season, and I started to open it up to celebrity talent who would actually start off in the show and be part of the sketches as well. And so that really went well for us. I remember when MC Light did it, and Eastsiders did it, and oh God, there's just so many that I'll just start to I'll recall as we keep going. I had an NBA player, rest in peace. He passed away, but he came out and did the show. I had Gary Williams, who was already on a sitcom, come out and do the show. I had Tashina Arnold and Ed McMahon in a show. This is like groundbreaking. And it was funny that the booker who brought Ed McMahon in, said, you really want Ed McMahon? I was like, every Black person in America knows Ed McMahon, right? It's like busting out, bringing that check to the neighborhood. Come on, man. And he had a ball. And so that's when I knew we were on to something. So check out those last 8 episodes. And those last 8 episodes as well. And this is where you guys, some of you might want to get into the business, or some of you just have to kind of know that you just got to do your best and your all. And if you fall on your face, you stand up. When I was doing the first season, I was just executive producer, right? So I was show running the show. Second season, before the season started, my director went away. I'll tell you a little more about that when I write it in the book. But a couple of hours before the first shooting of the first episode of the second season, no director, right? So I had a choice. Shut it all down there, and those 60 to 90 people that had jobs wouldn't have jobs, or do it myself. And so I called my boss, my boss is an actual director himself, as well as he's a creator of Comic View. So I called my boss, and he said, well, Dre, you want me to come over and do it, or what do you want to do? And I paused, and then he said, well, why don't you direct? And thinking back at that now, I kind of think that he he saw something in me and that I didn't see in myself. I mean, I was a total producer type, right? I had no thinking about being a director, right? Hire a director in television. The producers kind of run the show anyway, so you hire directors, do your thing. Never really thought about directing it, but again, never created a show totally on my own as well too. So when he said that to me, it hit me. And remember, this is hours before, so we would have at least had to cancel that shooting day, find a director, and probably get a director the next day. But you don't want, remember I'm in Burbank. You don't want the corporate to find out that, that they lost a shooting day and they lost some money. So, they might be like, hey man, we'll just save the money and do something else. So, look, you can't even pull this off. We don't even do sketch comedy shows around here. So it's not something that was normal to it. So all of that quickly went into my head. I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And he's like, you sure? It's like, yeah. So he said, well, all right, have the crew take a break. So get on the microphone, have a go on a break. And my boss was like, let me talk to the technical director and the camera people, right? Remember, he's a director himself. So he reached out to them and he said, Andre, he's like, you were always in that second seat behind the director. Now you're just going up the front of the director. And there's certain things you've seen what the person do. Remember the black director that I was exposed to, I was seeing her doing her thing, right? So I know what they were doing, but I just didn't think about me doing it. But something, when you have that kind of pressure on you and you want to make sure this works, and you're thinking about all the other staff, something inside of you, it's the ancestors, whatever it is, something inside of you says, you know what, you got to do it. And so I had no fear. It was just the craziest thing. I didn't have any, it was not even about a fear. I'm an Aquarian, so it was just, I just wanted to make sure I had all these comics and doing their thing. And then, something happens and now that can't deliver. And we had a first season, so now we're getting our little stride together. Want to get the second season going. It was, it's first shoot of the second season, new format. I got this group of comedians. They're doing my version of In Living Color. And I'm just gonna be like, no. So that just wasn't that wasn't that wasn't gonna happen. So I remember, I'm a history buff too. So Julius Caesar went to England and he burned the boats. He's like, we're gonna win or we're gonna die. So there ain't no going back. So I was thinking like that, right? So took a break. They walked me through, because there's certain kind of calls that you got to make when you're when you're directing. Your technical director is sort of like is your sergeant. It's a person who knows what you need to do, how to talk to the camera people, when it's time for them to shoot, how you tell the cameras to do their thing. And there's just certain calls that you make. Camera one, take one, camera two, take two. There's certain things that you say so your camera people know that they're live and what they're shooting and what you're looking at, because you have multiple televisions in front of you. You see what your main shot is, and then the other cameras. So there's a couple of those things. So I had to digest in in minutes, but I did it. And the thing that my boss told me, he's like, and I actually asked my producers later on. It's like when he heard me over the microphone saying he would take a break, and then I said, the director's not coming back, and then I'm directing it, and blah, blah, blah. I knew that my voice had to sound like I was in charge, right? Because the crews listen to you, the talents listen to you, and they can hear, if you're a little sketchy with your stuff. And so if you're like, then they're going to be like, and so you just cannot have that at all. So I knew my father was in the military. He was sergeant major. So I knew what voice sounded like. I knew what confidence sounded like. And even though I was scared to the twits, but I knew that I had to come across like this was not an issue. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to rock and roll, get to your places, let's make it happen. And I had this from the beginning. And then that crew, that was there. These are veterans and stuff. They're like, oh, okay, I know he's an executive producer, but I don't know if he knows how to do this stuff. But remember, they weren't with me all of the years I've been doing stuff. So, but I had to let them know. It's like, look, we they didn't know what my background totally was. Right? They're there to do their job. They want to do a great job, and they want to respect the person who's calling the shots. And so at that time, I turned into an executive producer and a director of a multi-camera shoot in Burbank. I think, yeah, I had 5 cameras, right, shooting from inside of a truck, and I was able to do the whole season. And I didn't think about doing that prior to it, but sometimes when things happen, and I'm so glad I did that, because now I have that full regiment of creating something, producing something, and be able to direct it. And now I'm also starting to write, kind of taking that Jordan Peele approach uh, to my career. One of the things that I do want to do is bring The Way We Do It back uh, as a show, uh, because I think there's a place for urban sketch comedy, how we do it. And I love horror movies, right? So I wrote a horror movie that I want to put out there as well. I don't know what it is about horror and comedy, because I remember Jordan Peele was talking about that one time, that connection. I guess it's the pace, the style, but when he said that, it's like, that's it. I mean, I was a kid. I like horror. When I was a kid, nothing happened to that as I moved on in life. You know, I took the kind of corporate approach, and now full circle, I'm back to some of the comedy and horror, you know, and moving it out. And with all the things that are happening now with streaming and YouTube blowing up, uh, I wanted to kind of bring back that there's certain technical skills, structure skills, that we should be applying back, even in the YouTube space that my channel is in. But you'll see it feel like a channel. So even today, when I do these shows, you know, episodic television is a very disciplined thing, right? Uh, you know when it comes on. Your favorite show comes on Wednesdays. You know, like for me, it's an hour every Wednesday. It's kind of repetition, kind of build things, and so I want to kind of share with you that structure, and for young people, I want to inspire you guys to get in the game and do it the right way, and for you to hear things that you might not even just realize, you know, is a part of what you see on television, how you get it there. And in later shows, we'll talk about, you know, why the money is funny, why the money is different, like why when there's an advertising spot on my show, it's $1,500. If the advertising spot on MTV is $7,500, and so why is that? And then what does that do? I only have $1,500 to work with. They have $7,500 to work with. They can do more with that. So there's a lot of little stuff as we start to move and start to develop and start to bring things back, um, that we need to do. That's really important, and just to understand the business. And in my case here, talk to you about the business of comedy and why certain things are important. And later on, I'll talk to you like why owning your trademark is, a lot of people in sketch comedy and a lot of just in general don't own their trademark. And I own my trademark, right? So why does that give you a lot of leverage? Why Ryan Coogler, for example, now you're starting to hear this little hemming and hawing about him reverting back to the rights of his film in 25 years. Why is that a grumble? Right? To be able to create your stuff, your intellectual property is yours. Why is that a grumble to have a scenario where you own it? Right? For those of you who are in the music business, you understand that ownership thing. It's like, why is that important? But there's ways to work that out, right? It's all business. But that's that sophistication. That's that part that we need to start to do again, why Tyler Perry takes the approach he takes, right? And I'm not even talking about because I see the dialogue about how his content plays out or not, but put that to the side, but understand the business of what he is doing. And in the very beginning, Hollywood was doing his thing. He went out on the road, did his own thing to create that leverage to then start to discuss Hollywood and how we need to use that as a template. And again, remember what I said, there's a variety of styles, there's a variety of things. You might not like my version of sketch comedy, right? The idea there is then there should be other people that are doing sketch comedy. They're gonna have a different POV than I have, right? Variety is a good thing, just like there's certain types of movies that I don't like. Nothing with them, right? It's just that's not the genres that I'm into. Like, for example, I don't like slasher. I do horror, but I like monsters in horror. I grew up with monsters. I like monsters. I don't like the slashy kind of stuff. Other people love the slashy kind of stuff, right? So my horror movie is going to be monster driven, right? So when my horror show, my horror film that I'm doing is a monster. I'm bringing back monsters. Now mine's a life-size monster, but it's a monster. I'm not doing racial horror. I'm not doing social horror. I don't have that kind of skill set for that. That's not what my passion is. I'm bringing back monsters when I do mine. That's what I like, right? And when I bring back the way we do it as a sketch show, is just a certain kind of vibe. My sketch shows are dominated by stand-up comedians. Because remember what I was saying? Why I tuned into Saturday Night Live? I tuned in for a stand-up comedian. And when he left, I left. So that's what I like. I like that kind of live feel to it. And for me, it gives sketch. I remember when Leslie Jones actually did her first sketches with me on The Way We Do It. You'll see her stuff when you hit the channel, right? And it's a whole different way that we shot Leslie Jones's sketches when we shot them on The Way We Do It. She never got feedback from me. No, you can't do something from me. No, remember my criteria? You have a passion for what you're trying to do. It has to be with minimal props to pull it off because that's just what I have. Other than that, hey man, here to here, make it happen. And we're not doing a whole lot of takes because number one, we can't afford to do a whole lot of takes. And I like when the time you first do it. So she did a talk show kind of sketch on The Way We Do It. And she did Mob Boss. She just a little thing, just her, a little table, and it's called Mob Boss. I had nothing to do with it. That is her. That's coming from her mind, her creation. My job was just to capture it, make sure we could see it, we could hear it. This is her thing. And so I was very big on that. So my comedians also, they did their own kind of improv on television, stuff. There's people kind of, remember this is in 2000 to 2002. So that one, so a lot of people like, that was before Nick Cannon. Yeah, that was before Nick Cannon. So never got to meet the brother, but we did that one before that. So, but again, I was doing it on BET, which got bought. So my show is going to be a part of the BET regime going out. And so the Viacom regime is coming in with their own things. So I got kind of caught into that scenario, which for me personally was fine. Why? Because then I didn't have people all in my face telling me what to do, right? And I was able to get my 2 seasons under my belt, which now no one can take from me, right? And now and if you go to the channel, check them out. I think I put up 36 episodes up there for you to check out. Now, remember, this is in 2000 and 2002. So, but it was done. And that was the exciting part about it. So I'm going to wind down today because remember, I just wanted to just do it for an hour. I'll be back next Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And again, when you tune in, and I will be looking to see your comments, and let's talk about some things. I'll share with you. I'll never lie to you. If I don't know that certain thing, I'm not gonna say I know it. I'll give you a professional perspective of someone who has a full round experience about everything that has to do with production of a show. And um, what happened the years that I was, again, 1990 to 2002, the years that I was at BT, and any misconceptions or thoughts that you might need to have clarified, because there's a lot of people that talk about BT and at that time that weren't in there, and I can share that. You say who they are, and yeah, I can share with you who was actually in the room when certain things was happening. And I'll just give you a little tease. Um, uh, Ricky Smiley hosting Comic View, like who actually made that decision. And how do I know that? Because I was there when it happened. So you want to kind of know things like that. So build up from there, where we came from, in Normandy Casino, and why we had to go to Georgia, and then Florida, and then uh, Louisiana, and what was so exciting about doing those things. So again, I will see you guys next week, same time, 7 p.m. West Coast time on Wednesday. So I'll be here on Wednesdays, and let's chop it up. I want to hear your thoughts, and answer your questions. So till I see you again, have a good one, and I am out where I can find my out button. So I am ending the stream. Stay well, and I will see you guys next week.